Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST. It's a very special episode today because we are in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. And we have a couple of special guests. We've obviously got Adam.
Hi, how are you again? We've got some very special guests who've been living in Luxembourg for quite a while. We've got Judy, who works in IT, and she's been living here for how long, Judy?
Since 99.
Since 1999. And we've got Peter, who's retired and used to work in IT, and you've been here since...
1992.
Right, so 1992 was the year the Maastricht Treaty was signed.
Yes.
And
1999 was the year that a solar eclipse.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
In August.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing to do with anything.
Okay, thanks very much, Graham.
That's okay. That's what
We
I'm
were
here
thinking
for.
of doing one of these podcasts that features some of Graham's talents. There you go. Anyway.
So, Judy and Peter, you're both British citizens originally.
Yes.
And you have now Luxembourg nationality, do you?
No,
Or?
I won't be able to. I won't be, but he can.
So have you got
I
it?
have.
And what was the process with that? What was it?
I said the process was starting off with my daughter bullying me. She came back from Africa, but she said Brexit means we've got to get nationality.
Yeah.
And we were sort of umming and ahhing for some time. We've been trying to learn Luxembourgish, but fortunately, about 18 months ago, they changed the rules.
Right.
So if you've been here 20 years,
Yeah.
okay, you have to sit in Luxembourg lessons for something like 25 hours.
Okay.
But you don't have to say anything. There's no exam, okay? So suddenly you're through.
That's like getting your
The lottery ticket.
your boat driver's license in Panama. You sit in a room and they speak Spanish at you for an hour, and then you get your license.
Yep.
It's
It's a bit like that.
When I became an Australian citizen, we had to learn to speak Australian.
yeah. Well,
They remove your brain and put a meat pie in place. Can you see the scar? See the scar? No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, in Panama, I think they were just more interested in getting the $162 that they charge foreigners for that license, because for locals it was $20.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how, if you don't mind me asking, how much was it? How much did it cost you in the end to do that?
I seem to remember that when I last renewed my British passport, it cost me something like, and I'm quoting in euros, but something like 160, 170 euros.
Yeah.
Okay. That's you have to pay for all the extra shipping costs and everything else. The one here costs 40 euros. A quarter of the price.
It's unbelievable.
I'm becoming Luxembourgish. Damn it!
This is just not fair, is
So,
it?
Peter, when you say you had to go to Luxembourgish lessons, do you have an option to do French and German, or did it have to be Luxembourgish?
It has to be Luxembourg.
But are French and German official languages here?
Of course.
Yeah.
So you can't get away with, like, if in Belgium, for your citizenship test for Belgium, you have to speak either French or Dutch.
Flemish?
No, they don't make Flemish mandatory.
Oh, really?
I believe. Put it in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm sure you will.
What about Welsh? If you can speak Welsh, can you get your British citizenship?
I don't know. Like, Canadians can become Canadians if they can speak French or English, can't they? But they don't have to speak both.
Okay. I had a friend from Canada who was moaning about these people coming over to this country. Didn't mind them coming, but they should learn the language. And I said, well, how do you Inuit?
So we came here to Luxembourg. We were invited. We've got Andy sat over here in the background. We've got Chris, who's going to be in another podcast as well. And we've been invited by a group and involved with what they call BRILL. And
BRILL, that's a great name, isn't it? Brits residing in Luxembourg.
British immigrants living in Luxembourg.
But that's got a B. That's got an I between the B and the R.
I know. But it was formerly called British expats in Luxembourg.
Ah, right.
And they've changed it. This ties into the language thing.
Yeah.
They've changed the name. And we were talking about this in our earlier video. That, it's interesting how Brits living overseas consider themselves expats. But when someone from Luxembourg or Portugal or Spain moves to the UK, they call them an immigrant.
Yeah.
And it was like people used to say to me in Australia, oh, have you going to the British Expat Club in Perth or something? I'm like, no, I'm going to the British Immigrant Club, for a beer, to talk about, I don't know, EastEnders.
Overstay your visa and then you could be an illegal immigrant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So going back to the passport and getting Luxembourgish nationality, how long had you lived in Luxembourg before you felt that you had to do that? You said you
Well, I mean,
came in
I
92.
didn't feel I had to do it until this idiot thing about Brexit turned up. And then suddenly it was obvious we had to do it.
Yeah.
Were you given a vote? Were you allowed to vote in the referendum?
No, I've never been allowed to vote in Britain. That's not true. In 1965, I had a vote. Right? Ever since then, I've been denied a vote.
Was that Harold Wilson?
I think I've probably voted for him.
Oh, well.
And I wasn't allowed to vote either. I've been out of England for more than 15 years. So
you weren't allowed to vote?
No, they decided it without me. So yeah, I had no choice in it.
How do you feel about something that has had such a major impact on your life being taken out of your hands? I mean, isn't this what the American Revolution was about? Was about people not having a say in their lives, essentially.
Oh, exactly. That's why the BRILL group exists, I think, and that's why people are very disgruntled. And most of the people I know have solved it by becoming Luxembourgish. That's
I feel it's slightly different. I mean, I think Britain has just closed the door on me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like saying you went, so you can't come back.
You know, I'm sort of almost locked out.
That's a terrible thing to feel.
Yeah.
Because when I emigrated, I went to New Zealand first, then I went to Australia. I became an Australian citizen. But I remember my parents saying to me, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, you can always come back. But you feel locked out of your own birth country.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not, obviously I could go back, I'm not saying that. But, you know, I am a European, okay?
Yeah,
I am
je suis European.
First. And suddenly, you know, I have to make a choice between the big part of Europe or the tiny wee little bit off there. The choice is obvious, I'm going to stay in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's annoying me is I don't even have the right to stay. It's all
No,
right.
we're gonna touch on this.
Yeah.
You don't have the right to stay in Luxembourg.
No, not after next year. No, not after January.
Can you talk
next year,
through us the process here? So have you gone for nationality?
No,
and
I
they've turned you down?
because I haven't been here 5 years. Although I've worked and paid taxes in Luxembourg for 20 years. We had 3 years where we left to go live in Abu Dhabi, and I left my husband to come back with my 3 children. And because I came back, because I broke the time that we were here, and we never lived in Luxembourg. We had the right to live in France, so we lived in France. We were border workers, and
Cross-border commuters, in fact.
Which you have the right to do in Europe. Nobody said you had to live in.
Yeah,
one
because
country.
we were just
you had to pick a country. Yeah, you could just go anywhere.
Because we were in Schengen. And
I lived next to Schengen.
I couldn't reverse out. I couldn't reverse out into the traffic. So I thought, well, I'll back out the other way. And we went down this road, and we ended up in France. And turned to get to a roundabout.
The bridge is the border,
Yeah. And we turned round to come back. And it's like you could literally be living in France there and working in the museum where we just have
That's
lunch.
Right, we did it.
You know.
So we used to live 10 minutes from Schengen. Our route to work was you go through Germany you go from France into Germany, through into Luxembourg. That's how you go to work. You go through 3 countries.
I was talking about this to my nephew who lives in Wales and he works in Chester.
Yeah.
What if it was suddenly
It is literally-
you had to decide, do you want to be Welsh, do you want to be English?
But not only that, once we do Brexit and you're actually in that situation, they're saying that you have to carry your passport to even change country. Right now, I live in Rodange, which is on the border. It's 500 metres from Belgium and it's 100 metres from France. So for me to walk out my door, I'm going to walk into the woods and have to take my passport with me when I walk my dog.
Yeah,
because
take the
I'm
passport
English.
with you to go to the shop. That seems...
No, but even to walk out my door and go...
But this is like the guy who lives in Ireland or lives
on
in
the
Northern
border,
Ireland,
doesn't he?
and he watches television in the Republic of Ireland, and he goes to the bathroom in Northern Ireland.
Because his house
His
straddles
house
the border.
crosses the border.
And these imaginary lines that humans have just decided, oh, here's a line here. This river's a border, is it? Okay, what about that river? No, not that one. And you're like, okay, so these borders are really quite arbitrary.
But nothing. But when we drove over at Schengen into France to turn round, the only thing that told us that we'd gone into France there was a sign saying what the speed limits are. You know, 130 for the auto route, 100 for a trunk road, and 50 for built up areas. And then it was the same coming back into Luxembourg. But in Luxembourg, it was like they didn't give a monkeys about it because we crossed the border. If you remember, I said, "Oh, we're crossing the border on the GPS."
Because you could tell because the surface of the road changed.
And the line was on the GPS, but the sign was about 300 metres down the road. It's like they said, well, France can have that bit.
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Whatever. But this is fascinating, and I feel so sorry for what's happening to people, British people living in the EU 27, who, especially people like yourself, who weren't even allowed to vote in that damn referendum, which affects you a lot more than it affects someone who lives in Stoke and will never ever leave Stoke.
Yeah.
The people that know how Europe works, and it works well, weren't allowed to vote. Isn't that strange?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Cozy, we've done a podcast with Cozy. You've done a couple, haven't you?
Yeah.
And she's German, and she's been in the UK. She lives in Liverpool.
Most of her life.
And she's been in the UK now longer than she's been in Germany. And she wasn't allowed to vote. And her husband is Scottish. Her children have got dual nationality of Germany and the UK. And she, she's been involved with the In Limbo project. And they did the In Limbo project, which was for EU citizens living in the UK. And then all these British citizens living in the EU said, what about us? So there was a second book out about it. So have a look at In Limbo, and I'm sure Graham will put up a thing here, a web link.
In Limbo 2 as well.
In Limbo 2 and In Limbo. So Graham will put that up there, and big up to Cozy. So it's really quite devastating what they're doing, isn't it?
Before the referendum, were you taking an active interest in this whole referendum process, or did you just think, it's never going to pass?
I honestly thought that it wouldn't pass. I thought it just wouldn't. I thought that they wouldn't be so stupid.
What about you, Peter?
I didn't think Cameron could be so stupid.
Oh,
I mean,
know.
he called the thing.
They went to Eton.
The arrogance.
He called it just because there was a problem in the Tory party. Okay, that's why he called it.
Yeah.
Well,
And he thought
exactly.
he would win, and he was so confident he would win that he didn't even make it. Normally, when you have an advisory referendum, what is an advisory referendum? It's something to give you advice, and if people say you should investigate this, then you investigate it, and you come back and say, well, this is the deal. Do you want it or not?
But if half say one thing and half say the other thing, you go, oh, well, let's just go with that one.
Yeah.
And it was like, what was the difference between the
52 to 48%.
Yeah, exactly.
And the day before the referendum, Nigel Fartas said on television, if it's 52% stay, 48% leave, that will be unfinished business by a long way. And he's not given the courtesy of that to people on the other side of the argument. And it's like 17.4 million people. And what we get sick of, and we had this rant in the car on the way over, is that people say, the democratic will of the people. It's not even a majority.
No, exactly.
No, but look, this democratic thing, the Brexiteers all the time, we have to respect the vote. We voted, we can't vote again. Do you know what the definition of democracy is? Most people think it's one person, one vote. That is not the definition of democracy. It's one person, one vote, and you can change your mind, because if you can't change your mind, it's dictatorship. And the dictator that I'm thinking of here is Adolf Hitler. He came to power with a democratic vote.
He did.
One person, one
Yeah.
vote. It was a divided country, okay, which is interesting. But he came there, he got into power, and then he said, stop. No more votes.
Yeah.
Why is it that we can't have another vote now that we know what the deal is?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
And the thing is, as
Hitler
well,
did have referendums after he got in. First of all, to make him the Führer, then to invade Austria, and then another one to just, I don't know what the third one was. But the referendums were things like, they'd have a, do you want us to invade Austria? And it was like, no, which was tiny, and it had yes, which was a big circle like this. And you think they're making it up, but this is the way it was.
and this is like the Brexit Party symbol, the Brexit Party Company Limited symbol, which they have on the voting, on the ballot paper in the EU referendums earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it's a big arrow pointing to the box.
But you can see the fear in the Brexiteers' eyes when you say let's have another referendum, because they know damn well they will lose.
Yes.
Because people are way more informed now than they were 5 years ago.
I think
the
they
thing as
realise
well.
what they've actually
Yeah.
done now,
Yeah.
rather than
And-
it's
but-
a utopia. We'll get rid of the immigrants. That was
get
that was
rid
the
of the
only thing
immigrants,
that was the only thing that
you
they were
make
thinking.
immigrants
Well,
happen.
this is
Yeah.
what's the guy who got really pissed off Mark Pudding Francois, and he said not everyone who voted for Brexit is a racist or against immigrants.
Will Self.
Will Self, but he says not everyone who voted for Brexit is a racist or against immigrants, but every racist voted for Brexit. And
The point is that the idea that we can't have another referendum. Hang on, That referendum that we had in 2016 was actually the second referendum we've had on EU membership, although it was the EEC back in 1975.
Well, it was the common market,
when we
wasn't
had
it? Yeah.
a 2/3 majority to stay in the common market. And they didn't. There's a lot of lies that have been told time and time again. And I think you guys might have been vaccinated against these lies because you've not spent as much time in the UK. But the last 30 years, one of them is that it was only supposed to be a trade thing and then it got out of hand. But if you look at any of the literature that came out in 1975, in that referendum, it all says we are moving towards a more closely integrated Europe. This is going to be a political thing. This is going to be more than trade.
It's going to be currency.
Yeah, but how many people read the fine print and how many people listened to the Daily Mail and the newspapers?
Millions. So, Peter, you used to work for the EU Commission, is that right? And what was your job there? What did you do with them?
Well, I mean, I was... in fact, managing a website. The website was interesting because it helped companies getting involved, companies, universities getting involved in research. Because, of course, the research program of the EU is very big. And indeed, the British were remarkably successful in getting money out of the pot, if you like.
Yeah. And
I was part of the process of actually publishing the information so people would come in from the outside, companies, universities, join together on projects. That's what I was doing at the Commission, I say, managing this website.
And the one of the things that Michel Barnier said recently was, I think it was Michel Barnier, was about the fact that David Cameron asked him not to intervene or the EU to intervene in the Brexit referendum. And so all these lies that got told about the EU went unchecked. There was no one there really to say, hang on, that's not true. Except David Cameron, who wasn't the best advert for Remain.
No, because, I mean, the problem is in places like where I'm from, the Labour Party could put a pig on the pedestal, and if it's wearing a red rosé, it'd win. They don't trust a Tory. They trust Nigel Farage, who was a failed Tory, but they don't trust a Tory. So David Cameron was never going to win the hearts and minds of people in Rotherham or Worksop.
Just to put this in there, though, a week before the election, a week before the referendum, half of all Labour voters didn't know whether Labour were for Remain or Leave.
Oh, this is where we're going to get the comments coming up at 23 minutes. We start. Leave Corbyn alone. He is the Christ. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Oh my word! So, do you think that now that Brexit's happened and we've kind of learnt some lessons, we've now got the biggest pro-EU group in movement in the world, in the UK, because of Brexit, and people have actually realised and gone.
Is that what you're seeing? I mean,
no, that's true.
No, but here it is. Yeah.
No, it's true. There's the biggest pro-EU because people in France, and you've lived in France or you live in France, and people don't care.
Oh no!
I mean, I came back to the UK and nobody cared about the EU. It was just something that was there, and it's good because I can live in France and get cheaper cigarettes in Belgium.
No, I think it was I can get my Polish plumber to come over and it's cheaper than the English plumber.
Well, exactly.
I think there was a lot of that as well. It was I renovated how many people that renovated their house in the last 10 years would say they used an English building company, and how many would say they used a Polish or Romanian or some other nationality. So it was all very good when they wanted them to come in and do all their building work. And things that they didn't want to do or couldn't find tradesmen.
One of the classic lines is that these immigrants are coming over and taking our jobs and taking our benefits. You can't do both. It's a nonsense,
But Peter, if the EU now, at that Brexit looks like it's going to go ahead, so obviously we're going to have to be at the front of the...
Rejoin rather than remain. We're going to be at the
Can we rejoin once we're out?
Yeah, yes, of course you can. Article 29. 49. The one before 50 says, anyone can join. It basically says anyone can join. And it's not restricted by geography. So Australia could join the EU. In fact, French Guiana and the Union Island and Guadeloupe, Mayotte, Martinique, I think they're all part of the EU, and they feature on the EU banknotes. If you have a look closely at the EU banknotes, they've got the map of Europe, and you see a little corner of South America, because that's French Guiana.
Yeah, but I'd like to come in here, because look, suppose Britain were to leave, and then people realised, in fact, what a stupid error it was, and they reapplied.
Yeah.
To start with, they wouldn't get the same conditions now. We
No.
wouldn't get the rebate.
Oh, no.
We'd lose
They're
the
not gonna.
rebate.
No, we've got
Absolutely.
Germany
But-
plus at the moment.
Wait a minute. Somebody like Spain may just veto us. They may say, okay, you can rejoin if you give us Gibraltar.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Any country that we've had a fight with for any reason in Europe could say,
Yeah.
we don't want them in here.
Because Britain became a member of the EU before Spain did, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
remember, Britain was stopped by de Gaulle.
Yes.
Yes.
Blocked it
Twice.
for 7
Twice.
years.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay? So, what concessions would Britain have to make to rejoin?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to know what they're planning to do, because is it clear what is actually going to happen?
There's no
with
plan,
the
Judy.
with the immigrants that are in England right now, the immigrants that are there taking
The
English jobs or whatever, the
3
3
million.
You mean
exactly.
the doctors and the
EU
nurses
yeah,
in
Yeah.
the National
and the
Health
people
Service?
working in
Yeah.
the fields near where
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
brought up
yeah,
that are
yeah.
doing the work that I don't see many people down the job centre actually
No.
queuing up to do.
No, exactly.
Yeah, the
Citizens-
packing factories, the onion sorting, the
There is fruit. There are fruit and
the pickers.
vegetables rotting in the fields in the
Yeah.
UK
Yeah,
right
and
now.
that's the whole Cambridgeshire area is
Yeah,
suffering from
yeah.
that,
And
and they
Lincolnshire.
can't get people to actually. Although we've got lots of people looking for jobs, you can't find people to actually want to do those jobs. So all the people I grew up with that were doing those jobs, what's going to happen to those is my question. Are they going to be kicked out? Like, are we literally going to
Well,
kick out 3 million people
the-
and just let England sort itself out?
Well, this is the thing, and Peter touched on this with Herr Hitler and his policies about sort of elections and democracy. These people weren't given any democratic rights in the referendum.
No.
And the thing is,
Neither were we. So the people
And
that
neither
are
were
most
you.
affected by the movement
Had the least
had the
amount to
least
say.
amount of say. But the problem is that Theresa May, when she was Prime Minister, and I never thought I'd say we've got a worse Prime Minister now than Theresa May.
Hold my beer.
Hold my beer. Yeah. But Theresa May brought in this settlement scheme for EU nationals, and she said it's £65 each initially. And the thing is, after Windrush and her hostile environment towards migrants, nobody's got any faith in this
I
scheme.
don't have any faith in.
This is something that I struggle with. I really do, because there's a part of me that thinks, God damn it, England, you stupid, arrogant, idiotic country that has lived off the fat of other countries that we stole, like the treasures that we stole.
All the wealth comes from... Yeah.
We were lucky to be on the winning side of the two wars, but only because we had so many allies across Europe and across the world. The Commonwealth and the USA all came in to help us out, and we wouldn't have won those wars had that not happened.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of me that thinks we deserve Brexit. We've never been taken down a peg or two.
Yeah.
And we'll be out of the EU for 5-10 years.
Maybe
and it'll
more.
be horrible. We will be the least competitive advanced economy in the world. We will be at the bottom of the G20 rankings. We'll be at the bottom of the G35 rankings.
Yeah.
And we will have to weather that storm, and then we'll rejoin the EU with our tail between our legs. And yes, we'll have to take the euro.
And-
we'll have to make our system
exactly.
more democratic.
We'll have to join the Schengen zone.
We'll have to join the Schengen zone.
But meanwhile, everybody that doesn't agree with that, the majority of people I know here, I don't know how many you know, most people have solved the problem by becoming Luxembourgish or going for French nationality or whichever country they live in. But if you happen to be here like me for a long period of time, but you haven't fulfilled the number of years, you can't do that. So I feel completely
you are like
disenfranchised.
double in limbo.
I'm double in limbo.
Can you, what about getting French citizenship?
No, you can't, because we left like a long time ago. My children are Luxembourgish. They were born here. I've got 3 children that were born here. And
So you,
although I lived here, I didn't live here. I lived in France. I paid my taxes in Luxembourg. My children were born here. My son plays for the national team. Is he going to be allowed to continue?
plays for the national Luxembourg
He literally
team.
plays rugby for Luxembourg.
He plays rugby for Luxembourg.
In the
Coolest
under
people in
18
these
team.
podcasts.
Cool.
Except, will he lose the right to be able to do that, despite the
Because
fact
he
that
hasn't
apparently
got a-
because he has a birth certificate, he can still play it, but we will no longer have the right to live here.
And you will not have...
Wow.
So he'll have to be in England and come back, but he won't be able to actually live here unless I become Luxembourgish, which I can't do because I have not been here for 5 years.
Can I just quickly say, the end of what I was going to say was
Sorry.
like the fact that I think that Britain probably deserves this, though England deserves this.
England, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't want to see my friends and family suffer for 10 years through that. I've seen states that fail. I've been to Zimbabwe. I've been to Venezuela. I've been to Somalia, for Christ's sake. I see when things go wrong. They can go very, very wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to live through that. But going back to your story.
But the people that are already in it, the people that are in it right now, are probably solving the problem, I would guess, the immigrants in England by becoming English or getting British passports. And we're trying to solve the problem by getting
I did a
European passports.
podcast with someone
Because
who had
we used to
lived.
I think it's fundamentally unfair that if you've got somebody that chose to live in another country and they make that their home, that nowadays, but that then you put them in this situation, don't give them a vote, and then they don't have any right to solve their issue. I think if you were over the finish line or when Brexit happens and you were living in a particular country, you chose that country, you made a clear choice, it was your country, and you don't have the right. I think that's just idiotic. Like those immigrants that are
Makes
Romanian.
me so angry.
No, it doesn't. Imagine living in it. But exactly. Imagine the 3 million that are in England should have the right to become British citizens. And
But the problem with that is, though,
but if you make
the
it
problem.
hard-
The problem with it is that people can have the right to become a British national, but some countries do not allow multiple nationalities. So Germany, for example, only allows multiple nationalities to people who are within the European Union.
No, I've got a friend who's just got the joint.
No, but if they're British, they're still in the EU. If they've got Germans, and they can
but
become
right now, because they rushed
Yeah.
it through right now.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
rushing
But
it through.
the
That's
point
right,
is that a German may be living in the UK. After the UK leaves the EU, they will have to rescind their German citizenship. They will have to rescind the citizenship of their
exactly.
birth to become British. Why should they be forced to do that?
Well, exactly. But also, if we were already in the country when they voted for Brexit, or you were already in Europe when they voted for it, right? If you've got a requirement, you've got to be there a certain number of years, and you've already made clearly that your point that you want to be in that country, then we should be. If Brexit was like, when was it? 2016 now. If somebody clearly moved in the meantime, continue as it was before Brexit, so that basically they made a choice. Like it's like if you're playing a game of chess and you make a move in one area and then you say, oh, hang on, we're going to change the rules now. You can't sit there anymore. You've got to come back here. That's just unfair.
Well,
I find that completely unfair.
it is unfair.
And
but
I think the rules should be
unfair.
for the people already there, existing as they are now.
It is, but the thing is that governments are sovereign and can make their own rules. And this is the thing this is one of the big Brexit lies, is that, Paul Dacre of the Daily Mail wangs on about not being able to make sovereign decisions in Parliament. And all parliaments in the EU member states are sovereign and can make their own rules. And that's the thing. Spain only allows multiple nationalities for Spanish citizens and those of Ibero-American countries and Portugal. Because they're a sovereign nation. So they can make the rules that they want, and that's as it should be. Whether it's fair or not is another matter.
Well, they can, but
I have the issue that my grandfather was killed in the Second World War fighting the Nazis in North Africa, and I would love to become a citizen of Germany. I'd love to live and work in Germany because it's good for engineering. It's a good career choice for me, but I can't become a citizen of Germany because when the UK becomes a third country, I will not be able to retain my Australian citizenship either. I'll have to rescind both citizenships. So I would have to give up British because they don't allow multiple nationality.
I think having three is quite a lot, though, isn't it?
No, but I'd quite happily give
up.
No, I know plenty of people who've got three.
I met a guy in.
I've got a
I met
friend
a
in
guy
Australia who's
Oman.
British, and his parents were Irish, so he's got British, Irish, and Australian nationality. My daughter has got Thai, British, and Australian citizenship.
Yeah, I met a guy in Oman. I think he had 6 passports.
Well,
one of the things was he had a French passport because he joined the French Foreign Legion.
Let's do that. So you have a French passport. I'll get rid of the beard.
Buried up to his neck in sand. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough in the UK is this problem where in, I think it was about 2011 or something, this is part of the hostile environment thing, they decided that if you brought your spouse over to the UK, so it could be someone who's your partner as well. It doesn't have to be. You didn't have to be married, but if they were from any other country than the EU,
A third country
That's
national.
a third country national.
you had to be earning £18,500 a year. You had to be. It doesn't matter how much
Plus-
they were earning. They could be earning Brewsters, but all that mattered was how much the
Plus,
British.
it was an
citizens were
extra £2,000 per child.
They had a child.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so you had a situation where I had a friend who was in the British Army. He was an engineer, and he had a wife from Chile, and they had spent 10 years travelling around. They'd been married 10 years. They came back to the UK because he had, even though he'd left the military, he still had contacts, and he was an engineer, and they had a military contract for him in Southampton. He flew into the country with his Chilean wife. And they said, "Oh no, you're not earning enough. You know, you got to prove how much you earn." And he said, "Here you go. I'm earning." It was like 50 grand. You know. And they said, "Oh no, it's got to be a salaried job. This is a contract job for a year."
Yeah.
And they made his wife fly back to Chile.
Thank you again.
This is a guy
Hugo.
who met his wife in the Falklands. This is a guy who's done 2 tours of Iraq and
Who
2 tours of
actually,
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
And it's like
actually is
he
fighting
didn't
for
see
the UK.
his wife for a year.
That's disgusting.
And that's what's going to happen to EU citizens.
But it is, I mean, it's-
British people who are married to EU citizens.
Well, it probably will do, exactly. But as well, like, you know, if you've got the rule, you've got to have lived here for, say, 5 years, but then you do Brexit 3 years ago, and the rule in any given country is that you've got to live there 5 years. You haven't got that choice of, you know, if it's 5 years, then just change the rules. Just change it and say that it should be 3 years or 2 years or something.
Okay.
Surely, don't you think?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
because-
possibly,
but if we become third-party nationals, the way I understand it is that we'll be under the same kind of deal, that it's okay if you have a job right now. Okay, we might have a job. We might be in Brexit, and in 3 years' time, we're still in our job. We're okay. We don't turn Luxembourgish. We stay English because we want to be English. We don't want to become another nationality and say we don't want to give up our British passport. Then, at the point we want to change job, we pass behind every single EU citizen in order to get a job.
Yes.
At that point, and that
Yes.
will be forever
Yep.
in the future the case.
Yep.
Yes.
So you stuck with the job you're in right now because when you change, you're going to be out.
Yep.
That's the way it is right now.
Yeah,
It
but-
just seems.
but
Peter, I bet you're
People-
glad you're retired, mate.
Peter, I want to talk about the democracy thing that you said earlier as well, actually. Is that okay? Because, I mean, you said something about democracy and changing its mind. Our Brexit secretary...
How many elections have we had in the last few years? We have a general
3.
election. Every
3.
2 or 3 years we have a new one. And yet a referendum, which is going to affect us for the next 40 years at least. We can't change our mind.
So it's an absolute shambles. However, our Brexit secretary, our first Brexit secretary, which was David Davis, famously said, when a democracy can't change its mind, it ceases to be a democracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dominic the Turnip Raab became the replacement. He's known as the turnip in
Is
EU
he?
circles because Raab is the Dutch word.
It's actually
Yeah.
rap.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
P at the
yeah,
end,
well, okay.
but it's
close
nearly
enough. You know.
As someone pointed out in the YouTube comments, which we love, keep the YouTube comments coming.
Yeah.
And also subscribe.
But yeah, they call him the turnip because it's so close to the turnip in Dutch. And, you know, this is a man who said, I wasn't aware of how critical the Dover-Calais crossing was for trade. This man's now, what is he, our foreign secretary?
Liz Truss is in charge of our post-Brexit trade deals. So far, we have continuation deals with about 9% of our current trade. And we've had deals sorted out with Papua New Guinea,
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
a country that in 1935, 1 million citizens of that country were literally still living in the Stone Age. And we've got a great trade deal with
country?
them.
Papua New Guinea
Papua
or
New Guinea.
Britain?
Good question. But don't worry, we've got Liz Truss on it. I'm sure she'll make excellent trade deals with the other 91.
Well, there were two immigrants picked up in the channel desperately trying to escape Britain on Friday, and that was us.
So we're entering this crazy situation where we are fighting against the tide of history. Today is the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the wall that symbolised
the Cold War.
But the oppression, the idea that you can keep people in an area and say you were born here, you came out your mum in this corner, and you have to stay in that corner for the rest of your life. And when I try and explain it to someone from Liverpool who voted for Leave, I say, imagine if suddenly you were told you had to leave your wife, you had to leave your children, you had to leave your house, your garden, everything, and go and live in Manchester. But I've lived in Liverpool all my life. Yeah, but you were born in Manchester.
Right,
And so that's what's important.
But-
you have to go back.
Well, I have an interesting one about that because I sat and watched that on television with a German guy. I was teaching English in Madrid on an Erasmus. I was in Madrid on Erasmus. So during my Spanish degree, so I sat and watched that with a German guy who was in tears because he was so happy it was happening. That scenario could not happen anymore because Erasmus will be gone. Because we'll be no longer part of that scheme.
And that's how our friend Cozy ended up in the UK. It was on Erasmus, wasn't it?
Yeah, and lots of British students have really benefited from Erasmus
but tell
as
me
well.
as well how you keep relations between countries like that. I sat and watched it with a German guy, and it's exchanges like that where you're in the cultural mix with those people. How is that going to affect us once England goes out and those children and the people going to university no longer have the ability to go and mix with all of those Europeans and actually see that culture because they won't be able to, presumably.
Well, we're
Do we know that?
we're going to end up with we are going to be, as British nationals, second-class Europeans.
The closed mentality to me is only going to get worse.
Of course it is.
And
It's removing the
island
openness and the
mentality,
education.
Not being open to Europe and any outside is going to get worse.
We should talk a little bit about the damage of the reputation of the United Kingdom. That Brexit
Peter,
has
you
done.
touched on this earlier on the phone call with us. The damage. How are we seen in Luxembourg? And that's the end of the podcast. It's been nice.
Oh no, it's just complete incomprehension. I mean, nobody can understand why. Okay, you know the one thing that's remarkable about the whole Brexit thing is that about 5 years ago there were a whole bunch of countries which were getting a bit edgy and saying maybe we want to leave. You know, you could see it in France, you could see it in Italy.
Marine Le Pen.
You know, people were getting, no, I think we want to leave. They've seen through Brexit just how bad it is. And none of them want to leave anymore.
No,
Because they know they're onto a good thing here.
They know the facts, and we now know the facts.
So, Judy,
Exactly.
what are you going to do?
What am I going to do?
What's your plan?
I don't know.
Are you just like, if you marry a Luxembourgish person, does that make you Luxembourgish?
Oh, I can't get
Doesn't
married
work that
to
way.
a Luxembourgish person. My divorce settlement says I can't get married. So I can't
Your divorce settlement says you can't get married. Kids don't get married.
Never get
That's all I can say. I've not been married, but my partner is recently divorced, and oh my God, the hoops they make you jump through.
So that's not an option.
Okay.
I'm on a temporary contract that finishes next year, so I've just got to get another job. But my point about jobs is it's okay, I get another job or I stay in this job. If I get a permanent contract, that would be my ideal. But imagine, even if I had a permanent contract and in 3 years' time I want to move job is my issue for the people that actually want to be able to have freedom of movement. That's what I want to fight for, like really. Because I don't think, with all the history that we've got and all the choices that we've made, it's right to put us on the same level as a third-party national that's had nothing to do with the EU in the past. Because many people didn't make the choice to come here based on a certain scheme that now got taken from under them.
It's interesting you should say that about third-party nationals, because the UK they were desperate to get some trade deals signed up. And the first place they went to, where will we go? The Commonwealth. Biggest country in the Commonwealth, second biggest in the world, India. So, we want to do a free trade deal with you to make it all look good. Okay, India turns around and says, yep, freedom of movement for our people.
Yep.
No, we can't do that. We'll just back out of the room sort of quietly, you know what I mean? And, so, yeah, it's just going to be impossible, for third-party nationals, and that's what we're going to become.
Yeah.
And the trade deals that we get, by their very nature, and I keep trying to stress this, the IMF only regard 35 nations around the world as having advanced economies. Mm-hmm. Only 35 members of the UN. It also regards Hong Kong and Puerto Rico, just to be completist about this, and Macau, and also Taiwan, but they don't have seats on the UN. So this is UN members, only 35. Nearly all of them are in Europe. 27?
20.
Of them? Yeah, 27 of them. No, 27 of them are in Europe. 8 are not. And of those 8, the EU has comprehensive trade deals, free trade deals with them. Canada, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan. Of the 4 that remain, there's only 4. It has an association agreement with Israel going back to the 90s. It is currently in negotiations with Australia and New Zealand. And they are not going to start trade negotiations with us until it's completed with the EU. And the last one is the USA, and we had the TTIP agreement that was going through, that was kiboshed by Trump, which will be revived as soon as Trump is hopefully not in office. God, I hope he doesn't get a second term. But that about wraps it up for the advanced economies of the world. And in the CETA deal and in the deal with Japan, it says that if they give a better deal to any other country or trade group, they have to revisit the deal that they've signed with the EU. We cannot, by law, get a better deal than the EU. And the EU has 500 million citizens. It's got an economy worth about $18 trillion, whereas ours is worth 2.6. They are the muscle in the world, and they're the only place that can actually do something about climate change.
Well,
the only people with the muscle
you're
in the
beginning
world.
to sound like a whinging Ramona.
I was going to say, well, who can actually do anything about any of this?
Well, that's what we're going to be. My next question for Peter was like, Peter, what should we do? What the hell do we do about all this?
I think you look upon me as the font of all wisdom in this. Actually,
Yes.
I just have sort of bad ideas all the time.
Brexit
for
is
example-
the worst idea. It
for
can't be worse
example,
than that.
look,
Actually, Burko has recently said this week, like on Thursday, said this is the worst idea we've ever had since the Second World War.
What's your opinion of Burko?
I think it's great, but anyway.
Do you know what? So when he stopped that vote, the one thing I could think was, John Burko, unlikely British hero.
Yeah.
That was my actual thought when I was like, Coach.
Anyway, sorry, Peter, we interrupted.
No, but it's business. There are various reasons that Brexiteers give, and one of the ones that I love is to take back control. Right? They don't want to be bossed around by foreigners and judges, whatever. Okay, so they want to leave the EU. They want to leave the Court of Justice,
Which we can't.
No, you could if you had a hard
justice.
Brexit. You could do what you like then, okay? But then you have your hard Brexit, but then you've got to leave NATO, because NATO can involve you in a war, okay?
Oh, how dare they?
Yeah.
They're going to involve us in a war that we don't want to be part of.
Now, you can't be
Who
part
knew?
of the WTO, because the WTO has foreign groups of people that decide, and they can fine you
this was-
enormous
You're
amounts of money.
surrendering your sovereignty to the
Exactly.
WTO.
And
You
the
can't do
WTO,
that.
The unelected
the
WTO.
WTO turned around and said, "Do you think the EU's undemocratic? Wait till you deal with us."
Yeah. and then, for example, you can't have foreign judges deciding on the validity of patents. So you have to withdraw from the patent office.
It's
So
true.
that means that everybody else in the world can rip off your patents.
Yeah.
But you are independent.
You're in control of your own.
In fact, when you look at the world, there is one country which actually has shown how successful this can be. We can be like North Korea.
Hooray! Oh, hang on, that's awful. Millions of people have
So
starved.
Boris
in
Johnson's going to change his name to Kim Jong-un or something.
Kim Jong Boris.
Johnson. No, it's Johnson Jong-un.
But yeah, but the cult of personality in the UK is So we've had all these lies for the last 40 years in our newspapers about the EU. The EU's been blamed for everything that's possibly gone wrong ever.
Bendy bananas.
And then when you actually ask someone for some tangible evidence, some awful thing that the EU's done to them, they just go. And when you point out that the EU, Objective One funding, gave Liverpool £1.9 billion and got Liverpool off its arse, really did. And Liverpool voted overwhelmingly to remain.
We've been wanging on for about 55 minutes, so we're in Oscar's Bar and Grill in Luxembourg City in the Grund, I think. That's handy.
Okay.
Right, for those who speak Luxembourgish, which is none of us, the Grund means. The Grund means something.
Andrew speaks Luxembourgish.
Andrew, what does the Grund mean?
Grund, it's basically the ground.
The ground. I was right. So that was a guess on my part on the way down.
It's the low ground.
Low ground. Low ground. Okay.
And it's the oldest part of Luxembourg. This is the original Luxembourg before all the building went up all the way.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But it is a really beautiful spot. So we're in a bar, we're in Oscar's Bar and Grill, and we were talking about this yesterday when we got into the city and we parked the car up and we're staying in this fabulous Airbnb, right? And who would you rather have a pint with, right? So, who would you rather have a pint with? Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson?
And you're not allowed to smash the
I was
pint
going to
over.
say, I was literally thinking.
I wouldn't mind having a pint actually with that girlfriend of Boris. You know, the one that, wow, I mean, she was really, she was hot, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's soiled goods now, mate. I mean,
Come on, when you're my age, you take what you can get, huh?
I'm hoping your wife doesn't watch this. All right, so, okay, so Trump or, sorry, not Trump, Farage or Johnson?
It'd have to be Johnson.
Cholera or syphilis? So it's Johnson. Okay, Farage or Trump?
Trump, because I'd have to grab the hair.
No. I know what you mean. It's
No,
weird.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, actually, I would pick Farage. The one thing about Farage, he has taken a position. He sort of sticks to it. I mean, regardless, it's a completely insane thing. Right? But I mean, you think about. I mean, Boris keeps changing things. Whatever he thinks his career will be better, you know.
Yeah.
He keeps changing his
Yeah.
mind, his position all the time. And Trump used to be a Democrat. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he used to be a Democrat.
Trump used to be a Democrat,
Being
yeah.
a Democrat is no good.
A
Well,
lot of
I'll just
Americans forgot
change
about
and be a Republican.
Premier
I mean, yeah.
Republican, yeah.
So, I
okay.
mean, Farage, at least he is consistent, right?
Yeah,
he
he's
may,
so
he
Farage
may
is
be
a
driving
constant-
over the cliff.
I don't know if that's a good thing. I mean, you know, this idea that Corbyn hasn't changed his mind since 1974, it's okay, but if more evidence is presented to you and you go, hang on,
Wait a minute,
I'm going to change your mind on this.
Yeah, but Corbyn is. I mean, the point is the guy is basically revolutionary. He wants to knock things down, okay?
Corbyn.
Yeah. And now he's in a position he's got to build things up, and he doesn't know how to. He wants to just knock things down, doesn't
Exactly.
he? Start again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've nailed it down to Farage for a pint and Johnson's bit of fluff, right? So for you,
Yes.
Liz Truss or Esther McVeigh?
Oh, God. Oh,
Who would you rather have a pint with?
Oh, my God. Okay, that is painful. That is painful because Liz Truss is the most vacuous person I've ever seen on television. I mean, there's nothing behind those eyes.
No.
I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
But Esther McVeigh is such an insult to everyone who has ever even visited Liverpool. Never mind come to Liverpool.
But she's a Scouser,
no.
isn't she?
Yeah, she is. That's my point. Oh my God, that is villainous. That is
okay.
evil.
And on that bombshell, right, we've been wanging on for about an hour now. And a big thank you to Oscar's Bar and Grill. Big thank you to Judy, and a big thank you to Peter for joining us for this podcast. And big thank you to Graham for taking us to Paris yesterday. We will always have Paris. Oh.
Just before we finish, is there anything else that you want to say? Anything else that you feel
Feel
like?
free to swear about any of the above mentioned.
No, I'm just interested to hear what everybody thinks that actually they could do about it. We're all in this situation.
Well,
I just want the solution.
we are going. There's not a lot that we can do when you've got the lies and is massications a good word for this, Peter, the great sage? The massications of those.
I think it's machinations.
Machinations, thank you. But it's absolutely disastrous. All we're going to do is, if we do leave, is we're going to go from a Remain campaign to a Rejoin campaign, and it will be as quick as that.
But what actually, I was going to say one thing. What came out in the papers on actually Halloween when it was meant to all happen? Did anybody ever read anything in the papers about it not happening? And
Yeah,
what
it was.
actually,
There was a riot. Did you see that? 7 people turned up in Trafalgar Square. 2 of them in shop mobility scooters with Union Jacks upside down. They were obviously distressed.
Upside
Yeah,
down.
That's upset they were.
Wait a minute. Everybody was looking for the ditch. Nobody could find where the body was in the ditch.
Yeah, the ditch actually put out an advert saying Boris Johnson let me down. So
But
anyway,
what can we do? I mean, like, if I just want to ask before we wrap up, because you've got a very unique perspective on the outside looking in to what's going on in Britain in this crazy midlife crisis that the entire nation seems to be going through.
Well, having 2 fathers that voted for Brexit in that. In
You
my
have
family.
2 fathers?
Yeah, that's a long story, but yes,
That's
both
a
of
long
them
story.
we're
voted
inviting Judy to a
resoundingly.
breakfast podcast tomorrow to discuss that.
Resoundingly voting for Brexit. They're frustrated right now. I can tell you from their point of view, they're frustrated right now. It's not done. They want it done. They want it done now.
Get what done?
The Brexit, they want it done. They're
Well, but what
frustrated
is their
that
Brexit?
it's not happened yet. They just want to be out
What?
of the EU. They want it to be done.
But do they want us to
On
leave
whose
it no
deal?
deal, or do they want to deal
Any
with
way
it?
possible, just to leave. As long as we left,
That's
we're
the
good.
most important thing
That's
to them.
it. Yeah, exactly. And that's just frustrating because for me, obviously, to hear that.
All we can do is continue doing what we're doing. Be aware that we do put this on YouTube and we get 2 or 3 viewers. And
Hi, Mom.
Dad,
Oh, hi, dads. You're going to love what I just said.
and don't read the comments. Let us read the comments.
Right.
You was saying don't read the comments on YouTube video. I just roll up my sleeves and like, right,
Well,
here we go.
we always read the comments. But anyway,
Yeah.
what we normally always do is raise our glasses at the end. Here's to the EU.
Here's the EU.
Bollocks to Brexit.
That was the Brexit. Cheers.